You mentioned off the top of this show that tonight's Hurricanes-Predators game has been postponed due to COVID concerns. With the latest, we bring in NHL Network insider Elliotte Friedman. Elliotte, what are you hearing? What's the latest on this developing story?
Well, basically, Jackie, what's kind of gone on here is that three Hurricanes players, and we'll see tonight who is added to the NHL's COVID protocol list, but three additional Hurricanes players have have been exposed to COVID. And, you know, there's some questions about whether or not they're false positives, but the phrase we're hearing now is abundance of caution. That's probably the right answer. I think in this day and age, with what we've seen going through the NBA and college football, if you're worried about an outbreak, you better just assume that the best thing to do is shut it down. And that's what they've done for the time being. Now, one of the questions we're starting to ask out of all of this is the NBA has gone to 2 tests a day, and they're thinking about 3 tests a day. The NHL does 1 test a day. It's a PCR test, and they're very accurate. They're much more reliable than rapid testing is, but it takes longer. So you have the possibility of a player being negative the day before, taking a test in the morning, that test being positive, but you just don't know for a longer period of time. And so one of the things we're kind of all asking here is, will they potentially go to the possibility of a second rapid test on the days of games just to check and make sure? Now, rapid tests just aren't as accurate as the PCR tests are, the NHL does, but they come back quicker. And maybe that gives you the opportunity to say, okay, we've got something here we have to check into further. So that's kind of one thing we're all sitting here and wondering about right now, to see if the NHL will have to change it or adjust its policy at all, because that appears to be the kind of gap here. Is the PCR test the NHL uses are very, very good. They just take a long time to get the results back from.
Well, Elliotte, I guess nobody said this would be easy, pulling off this 56-game season, but the league doing their best and trying to learn from other leagues, as they should, how they can do this better or more efficiently, I suppose. And we're all adjusting to this new baseball-style schedule and realigned divisions. How are teams adjusting to it? Because just as a broadcaster and someone covering the game, I'm adjusting, I feel like.
Well, I like it, Jackie. I do. I think I like it a lot. Now, we haven't seen, a situation where teams are playing 3 times in a row or 4 or 5 times in a row yet. We're going to see some of that this weekend. The Jets and Senators play 3 times in a row. We know there's a stretch later in the season where the Kings and the Ducks play 5 times in a row. And that might be a lot. We'll see kind of where that goes. But I like the 2-game back-to-backs. Now, I saw an article from Pierre LeBrun in The Athletic writing that sometimes TV executives don't like that setup. Well, Jackie, both you and I know you should never listen to TV executives. I think that, if this is something they want to consider with maybe 2 games in the future, back to back, I like it. I think anything that eases the travel schedule for the players and maybe increases the hate in the regular season, I completely support it.
Oh, like right now, I can't wait to see the Red Wings and Blue Jackets go head-to-head again tonight because of the way that game ended. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready for more. Round 2, let's go. But speaking of the Blue Jackets, we're going to ask you about Pierre-Luc Dubois. The trade rumors continue to fly. Torts gets asked about it every single day. Yesterday, Pierre-Luc Dubois has that 38-second shift in the final 7 minutes of the second period. What are you hearing about this situation in Columbus?
Well, the last I really looked into it on the weekend was I was told it was quiet. And, I think the really big challenge this year for Jarmo Kekalainen, the GM of the Blue Jackets, is when you have a week that started the way theirs did, with 2 losses back-to-back in Nashville, it takes a real firm hand on the rudder. Because, every time that happens, everything's going to ramp up. What are the Blue Jackets going to do? How does this affect them, particularly in a shortened season? The funny thing, Jackie, is that, the other day someone texted me, Dubois isn't giving the Blue Jackets very much. And he went, literally, the moment I looked at that text, he went right down the ice and scored. So, that was pretty funny. I think they're going to be patient. I think they're going to wait to see how their season goes and then make their decisions a bit later. Like I said, I heard at the end of last week, it was quiet. I'm always afraid to say that because you're worried the segment ends and he gets traded. But I think the Blue Jackets play this out a bit. I think there's a lot of interest, though, and I think there's some stealth big teams who are looking into this. Like I even think teams like Colorado and Tampa are sitting there going, if this guy's available, we have to at least be in on it.
Interesting. And a situation I'm sure that could be changing every day. I mean, that's how these things go sometimes. But out in Winnipeg, Patrik Laine will miss a second game tonight with an upper body injury. What are you hearing about his injury and his status in Winnipeg following more trade rumors with him?
Well, it doesn't sound like the Jets are overly concerned about his injury. Like, he was at the game in Toronto, and he was in the crowd watching what passes for a crowd watching the game. So it doesn't sound like they're really worried this is a long-term thing. They're just being careful, which is probably smart. I don't think there's anything going on with his availability right now. I think this gets played out. I would be surprised if he got traded in season, really. I will say this. I worked that Toronto-Winnipeg game last night. They lacked emotion without him. They were really flat. And I expect them to be a much different team tonight in Ottawa.
And, Elliotte, I bet you the contrast from the previous game that we saw Laine and made that stand out even more so because you had just saw Laine have that great game over the weekend.
Well, I said the same thing last night on the broadcast, Jackie, so I'm glad you said it tonight because that makes me feel a lot smarter.
Oh, no, you don't want that. But listen, you're the best. We appreciate having you on the show, and we'll be talking to you.
My pleasure, Jackie, anytime.